Everyone who watches or even just talks about the NBA has heard this argument before. There is no defense in today's NBA. Old school fans and critics of the league bring this claim up all the time, and they say today's NBA is just offense and three-point shooting with no defense being played. But in my opinion, that could not be farther from the truth, which is what this video is about. Because when I hear people say that there's no defense in the NBA, that is the biggest lie of the modern NBA.
Weaving his way to the hoop. And there is Victor Wembanyama. Oh, mama. Destroyed it. Back over the top to Davis. Beats two rockets to the ball. And then gets blocked up the rim by Ben Thompson. Call him Spotify the way he wrapped him up.
So before we can even talk about whether this is true or not, we first have to understand where this narrative even comes from. Why is it that so many people actually believe that there's no defense in today's NBA? And to be honest, the answer is actually pretty simple. Teams today are scoring the most that they basically ever have. The average NBA team today is scoring the most that they have since the 1960s. And on the surface, it makes perfect sense why people would think this. More points must mean less defense, right? But that's exactly where the problem is. Because more scoring does not automatically mean that there's less defense being played. And what we've gotten to in the current NBA is GMs, coaches, and teams have cracked the code to getting the best efficiency possible on the offensive side of the ball. And when we really break it down, there are three main reasons why scoring is so high in today's NBA: pace, space, and shot selection. This is basically the formula to maximizing offensive efficiency in the modern NBA. So the first part of that formula is pace. Pace is the most simple piece to understand because simply what pace is how fast teams are playing the game. But so we're on the same page, we should establish how pace is actually measured and what impact does it have in a basketball game other than just how fast players are running. Luckily for us, pace is a real stat that is tracked by none other than the NBA itself. The NBA has tracked pace in its games since the 1996 season. And what the pace stat actually measures is possessions per 48 minutes. And since an NBA game in regulation is exactly 48 minutes, we can basically think of this stat as how many possessions a team is getting in a game. So this stat is important because if a team is playing faster, they're moving the ball faster and they're getting more shots up. And ever since the NBA started tracking this in 1996, the average pace of play has steadily increased over the years. For this video, we're going to be using the year 2000 as a common reference point because that was a very important year for the NBA. That was the year of Allen Iverson's MVP season. This was during the Lakers' three-peat. And it was a time when the NBA was at one of its highest points in popularity. So in that 2000 to 2001 season, the average NBA team had a pace of 91.3. Now, if you compare that to last season, the average team had a pace of 98.8. So teams today are getting about 7 to 8 more possessions per game. And teams now understand that if you have more possessions in a game, you are getting more opportunities to score points. And to be clear, that is not because the defense isn't trying. This is not happening because teams are giving less effort on defense. It's happening because offenses now have the philosophy to push the pace, get up and down the court, use less of the shot clock to get more opportunities for points. And you can also see this when you just look at the pure shot attempts. In that 2000 season, the average NBA team was shooting 80.6 shots per game. And last season, that number was all the way up to 89.2. And so right about now, you're probably thinking to yourself, Sterling, this is a whole lot of numbers. Pace, possessions per game, shots per game, blah, blah, blah. And honestly, I do get it. It is a lot of numbers. But those numbers is what tells us really a lot about how the NBA offense has changed. Because one of the biggest reasons why we've entered this offensive boom in the NBA where it seems like there's no defense being played is because of the analytics of the game. Even one of the biggest sports movies in recent memory was Moneyball that focused on this exact topic. And that same mindset has made its way into the NBA. Because behind the scenes, a lot of the people that have been filling these NBA front office positions are people that have analytic backgrounds. And to put it how a lot of other people would put it, NBA teams are hiring dorks. And there's one man that was kind of the face of the beginning of analytics in the NBA, and so much so that he was literally given the nickname Dork Elvis. And that man is Daryl Morey.
I'm not worried about Daryl Morey. He's one of those idiots who believe in analytics. All these guys who run these organizations who talk about analytics, they have one thing in common. They're a bunch of guys who ain't never played the game, and they never got the girls in high school, and they just want to get in the game. No, man.
Daryl Morey was the general manager of the Houston Rockets for years, and now he's currently the GM of the Philadelphia 76ers. And why Morey is so relevant for our story here today about why offense is so efficient in today's NBA and why that's not a defensive problem is because a lot of Daryl Morey's original analytical philosophies have now been adopted by most of the NBA, which brings us back to our original formula of how to maximize efficiency in today's NBA. So we've already gone over the pace of today's game and how that influences offense and scoring, and in my opinion, number 2 and 3 of space and shot selection kind of go hand in hand. And I think that the shot selection of today's game is one of the main reasons why we see the spacing of today's game. So I'm going to go over the shot selection first, and then we'll circle back and we'll return to the spacing of today's game. The shot selection that players are choosing to use in today's NBA looks very, very different than it has in past eras. Obviously, the three-point shot is much, much more prominent now than it ever has been. But what's super interesting is how the mid-range shot has decreased significantly. And this is where analytics come into play. Because GMs and teams today are very aware of what shots are considered valuable shots and which shots are not valuable shots. Okay, so what we have here is obviously we have a whiteboard. This is an NBA basketball floor. This is the paint. This is the free throw line, the three-point line. You get the gist. So what we're going to do right now with this whiteboard is we are going to explain which shots in the NBA are deemed to be valuable. So what we're going to be doing with this is we're going to explain every shot basically on the basketball court and explain what shot is valuable and what is not valuable. Okay, so this is Sterling, and I'm editing the video right now, and I just realized that the way I explained this was not very clear. So we obviously know the efficiency if you make a shot. If you make a layup, it's 2 points. If you make a three-point shot, it's 3 points. But the actual shooting of the ball, not knowing if it's going in or not, where are the most efficient areas of the court to shoot the ball? And the way that we can figure that out is figuring out the points per attempt. So we're going to start in the paint. We're going to start right here in this paint area. And the league average shooting in the paint as of last season in the NBA was 57%. 57%. Now we're going to go to outside of the paint. Outside of the paint, but still inside of the three-point line. And we're going to loosely refer to this entire area as the mid-range. So last season, the NBA average shooting from the mid-range, what we're using today, because this area is technically shorter to the basket than this area, but we're going to loosely refer to this as the mid-range. The league average shooting last season from the mid-range was 43%, and then the league average three-point percentage last season was 36%. So these three numbers right here were the league averages for every area on the court of the main three, in the paint, the mid-range, and the three-point line. So, if you make a shot from here, in this paint area, which is 57%, you are awarded 2 points. Same with this back here. If you make a mid-range shot, you get 2 points. And if you make a shot from back here, you get 3 points. Okay, so at this point, it might seem like I'm explaining the most obvious stuff ever because obviously this is 2 points and that's 3 points. But it's going to make sense right now. So what we're going to do now is we are going to calculate the average point per attempt of these three areas on the court. So if you shoot the ball from right here, it's a 57% chance that you're going to get 2 points. So we're going to do the math. So 2 times 0.57 equals 1.14. So if you shoot a shot from right here, your average points per attempt is 1.14 points. So now let's calculate this area. If you shoot a 2-point shot from this area in the mid-range, you have a 43% chance to make it. So your points per attempt would be 0.86. So we're going to do 3 times 0.36, which ends up giving you 1.08. So if you shoot a shot from the paint, you're getting a points per attempt of 1.14. If you shoot a mid-range, your points per attempt is 0.86. And if you shoot a 3-point shot, your points per attempt is 1.08. So now we can very, very clearly see that on a per attempt basis, if you shoot here in the paint, or if you shoot a 3-point shot, those two are the most valuable shots in basketball. So what the numbers would suggest is that this mid-range area here, over here, over here, this is an inefficient shot compared to here and compared to here. And you can even see this trend when you look at a shot chart like this. This chart shows the 200 most popular locations where NBA shots were shot from. And in the year 2000, you can obviously see these dots are scattered out completely around the court. You see 3-point shots, mid-range shots, and close shots all being taken. But if you look at the one from 2019 to the 2020 season, you see that there's a big cluster in the paint, and then there's clusters scattered around the 3-point line with basically nothing in the mid-range. And the mid-range will never fully go away because obviously one of the main principles of basketball is taking what the defense is giving you. And this is why all of the elite scorers still use the mid-range. Guys like Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, Kevin Durant, Kawhi Leonard, DeMar DeRozan, Devin Booker. Elite scorers still thrive and use their bread and butter in the mid-range. But for the most part, the mid-range has been phased out a lot. And this now goes to our next point, which is the spacing of today's game. Because obviously, if you understand that the most valuable shots are taking place either at the rim or at the 3-point line, you obviously want to have players that play their best basketball in those areas. You want guys that are going to be able to shoot the 3-ball consistently because that puts so much more pressure on a defense. If a defense has to guard players all the way from the basket to the 3-point line, it's going to make it multiple times harder for that defense to be successful. And if you look at the spacing of today's game, it is completely different than previous generations, where if you look at a picture from a previous era and you see what the spacing looks like, it looks cluttered, offensive players don't have as much space to operate, and defenders are closer together, which thus means that they have to cover less ground to guard the offense. In today's game, the offense is much more spread out with the spacing because you have to respect all 5 players on the court from the 3-point line. You can't sag off. You can't allow them to have space because of the fact that most players in today's NBA are respectable 3-point shooters. Where in past eras, the center most likely could not shoot threes and the power forward most likely could not shoot threes. Nowadays, most teams have 4 guys who can shoot threes on the floor at all times, and some teams have 5 players on the court that can shoot the 3-ball. And that simple fact alone just makes defense so much more hard to play in the modern NBA. Playing defense in today's NBA is the hardest that it has ever been, but it is not because of lack of defensive effort or lack of a defensive skill set. There is so many elite defenders in the NBA today, from elite perimeter defenders like Amen Thompson and Cason Wallace to elite interior defenders and rim protectors like Victor Wembanyama and Rudy Gobert. And one of my favorite parts about the modern NBA is that so many teams have different defensive identities. If you like the rough defense of past eras, the Detroit Pistons play very physical defense and they're very successful at it. With guys like Asar Thompson, Ron Holland, Jalen Duren is a very physical defender. Isaiah Stewart is a great defender, and he's not afraid to be the enforcer of that team. Isaiah Stewart is most likely known more for getting into fights at this point than playing good defense, which his defense is great. The Oklahoma City Thunder have such good perimeter defenders that they have the ability to go and be aggressive and swarm the ball, put pressure on the ball, because they know that when they have 4 elite perimeter defenders like Lou Dort, Cason Wallace, Alex Caruso, and Jalen Williams, that they have the ability to be aggressive and not have to pay for it. The San Antonio Spurs have Victor Wembanyama, who literally has the potential to be one of the greatest defensive players in history, and he is to the point where he is a literal defensive system by himself. And this is not to mention that they still have great perimeter defenders like Stephon Castle, De'Aaron Fox, Dylan Harper, Devin Vassell. Another team that plays very good defense is the Houston Rockets, and their style is sheer size. They have 6'7" Amen Thompson. Kevin Durant is 6'10". Tari Eason is 6'8". Jabari Smith Jr. is 6'11". They have such long and rangy wing players that are versatile and very, very good defensively, and they have the size aspect. The Minnesota Timberwolves have Rudy Gobert, who's another guy who is a defensive system, and they have the ability to just funnel everything to the paint and let Rudy clean it up. Teams play defense in the NBA, and every team has a little bit of a different flavor of ice cream, which is one of my favorite parts about the modern NBA. So to finally sum up today's video, defense in the NBA is alive and well. The reason why we see so much scoring in the NBA today is because offenses are running at the absolute highest potential in terms of efficiency. And remember, the formula, the 3 steps to getting the best efficiency possible in the modern NBA is pacing, spacing, and shot selection. So I want to tell you guys, thank you so much for making it to the end of this video. If you did, I put a lot of work into this video, so if you made it here, it actually means a lot to me. So I want you guys to go down below in the comments and let me know what you think about defense in today's NBA. Has analytics gone too far? Is offense too overpowered? Do you think there actually is no defense? Let me know in the comments. Go down below, like this video, subscribe to Yanker Hoops. It would mean so much to me if you did any of those things. Thank you guys so much. I'm out of here.